They have made us forget what it means to be human. That's what we're going to talk about in this week's episode of Linnea Stella. So welcome here if you're new, and also if you've been hanging out here for a while. I will also share 3 tips on how you can trust more, and maybe there will be a little bonus tip, because I feel generous today. So the inspiration to today's video, as always, came from my own lived experience and what I am going through right now, because that's the place I want to share from. But also from a post I saw over on good old Instagram that said basically that people are awakening from the spiritual awakening. And basically that spirituality is all about just disconnecting and dissociating from this reality and move up into 12th dimension, not be tethered to earth, and basically bypass the whole bodily experience, which they refer to as the human experience. And this is something I've seen in, I don't know if I want to call it the personal development community, but people who are interested in more things than just the 3D experience of watching reality TV and eating junk food and so on. People who are interested in something more, they can go to either this state of dissociating, numbing themselves out, not wanting to be on Earth anymore. Think like the shadow side of Pisces. I'm a Pisces moon, so I can kind of relate. But then we have the other camp that is basically denying everything spiritual and says that, mastery of life, or the purpose of life is to have the human experience and not to dissociate and go into these states. And as always, I think that the truth is somewhere in between. Reality isn't that black or white. And when we look at the people in team, you're meant to have a human experience and being your body and experience these ups and downs as it means to be human. And I agree that things go up and down. I even have this little wave tattoo, my only tattoo, representing the ups and downs. But that being said, I also feel a strong calling in my soul to ascend. Ascending simply means getting back to the organic original blueprint for humans. And when we look at that, it actually wasn't that natural to be in these states of up and down, and you feel good one moment and then you go into fear and distrust and disconnection. It's not natural to be disconnected. And as I always say in all my videos, there is no right or wrong in the human experience. It all depends on what your soul wanted to experience in this lifetime. Some souls wanted more of a Groundhog Day life, where they just live the same day over and over until they leave this planet. That's not really what I signed up for. And that is why we talk about aligning with your soul. It's not aligning to some universal truth, but more about what is right for you, which may be different from what is right for me. But if you resonate with this type of content, I believe that you are also here to ascend past the blueprint of fear, the fear-based way of living, because that is not natural to humans. And I am all for getting back to the organic, to the natural, because that is what my soul wanted in this lifetime. I am a spiritual rebel. I just want to be free, and also to help others break free. So before we go into the 3 tips on how to trust your intuition more, I just want to say that wanting to have a human experience doesn't need to look like the way we have seen it look like, because that is not natural. Being in the matrix is not natural. Giving up your life force to this suppressive system is not natural. Being disconnected from God, from your soul, from your inner knowing, and living in your head inside of your heart is not natural. This is where trust comes in. Because when you want to ascend, when you want to start to live more and more from your soul, trust is the GPS. They say that the longest journey is the one from the head to the heart. And I can agree, because I am still somewhat on that journey, but less and less. I am more and more in my heart. And I use heart and soul kind of interchangeably here, because heart is kind of a dimensional connector device. It connects your physical body and your mind with your spiritual self, your soul. So, to the $1 million question, how do you trust your soul more? Well, Since there's a part of you that's rooted in the human experience because we don't want to go 100% Pisces and disconnect and just not be on Earth anymore, at least not I. I think that life is all about this dance between the survival-based part on you that is stuck in kind of the matrix programming and that doesn't see what your soul sees, which is that we are love, we are safe, we are infinite. The survival-based part doesn't see it, and we need to learn how to kind of interweave those parts. Also to let this survival-based part of you be there when you need it. For example, if you are in other thoughts and you're about to cross the road and a car comes driving against you, you want to have this shock reaction and take a step back. But you don't want that part of you to be in the driver's seat when you are, for example, making big life decisions and you feel strongly in your heart that your soul is calling you in one direction, but then fear is telling you, maybe I should just stay here. That is when you want your soul to lead. And that is why it's so important to learn how to trust. So with that being said, let's go into the 3+1 tips on how to trust your soul more. The first tip is going to be body-based. And that is all about your nervous system. Because you can't really bypass your nervous system on this journey of ascension. The nervous system is a vital part of your life experience. But luckily, it is malleable. It is kind of a scarf that is knitted in one specific pattern, but you can just open it and knit it in another way, in another pattern that you prefer to wear, to see. I have been working a lot on my nervous system, and it actually makes a difference if you do it correctly. It actually makes you be less in fear and anxiety and more in the state of peace, which I am in a lot these days, and it's just so liberating. This is what I want for everyone, and that is why I'm standing here today talking to you. It is possible to shift your nervous system and to shift how it responds to specific situations. It might be in relationships, because that's when a dysregulated nervous system shows up a lot and leads to so-called insecure attachment style, for example, avoidant or anxious attachment style. But it can also come in situations that are unknown. For example, if you're losing your job, a relationship ends, or you are invited to move somewhere, but you don't really know, you maybe don't know people there, you just feel a little excited about it, but you're like, I don't really know if I have the courage to do this. That's when a balanced nervous system comes in handy. And this is not something that happens overnight. It's not like you're snapping your fingers and your nervous system is just completely peaceful and you're never going to be afraid of anything else in your life. I think you understand that. But I do believe in miraculous and quick healings. But the nervous system is not just energy, it is connected to your physical body. The physical body is related to the earth element, and as such, it is more inert. It is more slow moving. So it's more like taking 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and be very patient and know that it is making a difference when you work on balancing the nervous system. So Linnea, you might ask, how do you balance your nervous system? How do I balance my nervous system, rather? Well, I'm glad you asked. So there are a lot of different modalities, a lot of different philosophies, teachings on how to balance your nervous system. But what I've found is that if they are genuine, if they are really going to make a positive difference in your life, they're all coming back to the same thing, which is that you need to be able to be present with yourself when you get triggered, in the moment that you get triggered. So it is really about finding comfort in the discomfort. And this is something when I was teaching yoga, I was always talking about that in the physical asanas. If you're sitting in a posture, you are in Upavista Konasana and you're like, I really feel this in the inside of my thighs. It feels uncomfortable. Just be present with that sensation. Don't resist it. Breathe. Breathe into the space that feels uncomfortable, into the part of the muscles or the tendons that feels, this doesn't really feel comfy. And that is how little by little, you will feel a transformation happening. You will feel the discomfort alchemize into comfort by nothing but your presence and your breath and your love. That's very beautiful, and that's why yoga was a very life-changing tool for me at the beginning of my spiritual journey, especially. about 9 years ago, because it really is not just what you do on the mat, it is the whole philosophy that kind of etches into your subconscious and that you bring with you outside of the mat and into life. So to give you a concrete example of something that I used to struggle with so much when my nervous system was more dysregulated is I am texting with a guy that I am kind of a little into, or let's be honest, obsessed with, way too soon. And all of a sudden he stops replying. That used to give me so much anxiety. I used to feel completely devastated. I couldn't go on with my day, with whatever I was doing. I canceled all my plans and I just felt completely abandoned. I was crying in fetal position, all that, about a guy that I barely knew. And that, of course, came from a dysregulated nervous system, sprinkled with a little core wounds on top. But if you focus on the nervous system experience here, what really helped me to transform that reaction, because I don't have that at all anymore, I can say I am healed from that. It was really that instead of trying to numb myself and go into coping mechanisms, run away, maybe go and have a drink or scroll Instagram, whatever people do to distract themselves, I was fully present. I was fully present with the pain, even though it felt like I was about to explode of pain sometimes. I was present. And I held myself the way I wanted that guy or my partner or my best friend to hold me. I held myself in the moment. And I taught myself that I am safe and I am loved. Not by words, but just by my presence. So it really makes a difference, especially if you do this over and over and over again and you make a commitment to yourself, because that's what I did. I committed to myself and I said, this is the most important thing, to heal my dysregulated nervous system. And if it hit when I was, for example, working on something, maybe I had a deadline, I just closed my laptop and I said, no, this is more important. I am gonna be fully present with myself and alchemize this pain. And it works over time, at least. Maybe the first time I didn't see a difference, the second time I didn't see a difference, but then I started to notice that my reactions in the same situation, in a similar situation, changed. Because I had taught my nervous system that I am safe in this situation, where in the past it thought I wasn't. So that is my first tip to trust more. Give yourself the gift of presence and learn to regulate your nervous system. Because trust is not something that you have to create. Trust is something that's very natural to you, to your God self, to your original human self, behind all the matrix programming. It is not something external that you have to install, like a new software. It is already there, underneath the nervous system dysregulation. Step 2 is for your conscious mind. And as you might know, the conscious mind is just a tiny fraction of your whole mental power. And that is why it's so important also to work on your subconscious mind. But that is kind of a big chunk, and I didn't want to put it into this video because that's something that we can talk about in video after video, because the subconscious is massive. It is the iceberg, the part of the iceberg that is underneath the surface of the water. I always say that awareness is the first step to change. And awareness in this case is the tip of the iceberg. It is the conscious mind that you are aware of right now. So we can start by speaking to your conscious mind. And based on that, you know the direction. You have the GPS, the compass direction for your subconscious to actually shift. And when your subconscious shifts, your life shifts. Did I lose you here? I felt like I almost lost myself. But if your conscious mind knows I am safe to trust, then the subconscious mind knows what direction we want to go in. Okay, we want to transform into and align into the belief that it is safe to trust. You need a direction first before you can start a journey. One thing I want to give to your conscious mind today is to reframe negativity. Reframe perceived negative experiences. For example, you might feel like, it's not safe to trust because one time I was in this relationship that broke up, and that was a very negative and traumatic experience. And if I could trust my soul, it wouldn't have put me into that experience. Or maybe I got fired from my job that time. And that's a negative experience I feel like I can't trust because I can lose my job any day. Because it has happened in the past. So how could I trust my soul when it has done these things to me? So the reframe here is that these weren't actually negative experiences. they were positive experiences. Because everything that happens to bring you closer to your soul, to bring you closer to your truth, to what you are here to experience in this lifetime. And I know that if you're resonating with this video, you're here to live in truth with a capital T. You're here to live in love. You're here because you have a pure soul that wants to get back into the original human blueprint of love. So maybe you've already looked at this, but look for the silver lining. Why do you think your soul made that relationship end? Even if you felt a lot of pain, aren't you better off today? And why do you think it took away that job for you? Maybe you had a toxic boss. Maybe you were underpaid and overworking. So even if it felt more unsafe afterwards, it actually opened up space. It was your soul saying that, hey, you are ready for the next step. But it needed to bring away the old first to create space for the new. And the new is always gonna be something better, more aligned with your soul, more aligned with love. So that is my second tip to trust more. Reframe negative experiences and see that they were actually positive. So then you can learn that, even if there is a part of me, my ego, my survival-based self, that thinks that this was a negative thing that shows that I cannot trust, it actually wasn't. It actually was the best thing that could ever happen, maybe in disguise, but still. My third tip is also for the conscious mind. And that is another reframe, that is that every negative experience you've ever had happened because you didn't follow your soul. And by follow, I mean either you didn't listen to your soul, or you didn't dare to take the inspired action that your soul suggested. Because the truth is that you are a co-creator of your life experience. And sometimes you are asked to take actions that aren't always comfortable. But your soul can't govern your whole life without your involvement. You need to be willing to work with it. Because your soul is not standing on 2 feet here on earth directly. It is standing on 2 feet here on earth indirectly through your body and through your actions. And that is why you need to act on the inspiration that it gives you, on the nudges that it gives you. So let's say that you had a traumatic relationship experience with someone who didn't treat you well. Maybe you were involved with a narcissist, for example. That might be something that your mind uses to say that, hey, I can't trust my soul, I can't trust God. Because why did I have this negative experience in this relationship? Why didn't I just meet the love of my life and they treated me regally from day one? Well, if you look deeper once again, your soul doesn't want you to suffer. So maybe it was trying to whisper to you in the beginning, like, this is a walking red flag, do not get closer to this person, they're gonna hurt you. But there was a bigger part of you that said like, but I kind of like the way that they give me compliments or give me gifts or whatever it might have been that they did to reel you in. So you were actually overriding your intuition. Maybe you were in a state of life where you were kind of disconnected from your inner voice, you didn't really hear it. Maybe you were very stressed in life, whatever. But my point here is that your soul always tried to help you. But were you listening? And were you acting on the guidance? Same thing if something traumatic happened. Maybe you were in an accident and you had this weird feeling in the morning like, oh, I shouldn't drive that way that I usually take. But then you thought, oh, but I don't want to be late to work by taking a longer way. So you took the usual way and then maybe you were in a crash or something, God forbid. And it's also good to know how your soul works with you in this life experience, because no, it doesn't want to put you into these traumatic, shocking experiences. But if you refuse to listen to it, it will speak louder and louder and louder until you have no choice but to listen to whatever you are meant to do next with your life. So yes, it can get a little brutal sometimes. It is always because you had a chance to listen and maybe you didn't. And this is not to say to blame anyone, because I've had my fair share of unpleasant experiences because I didn't listen to my soul. We're all here to learn how to listen to our souls, how to gain the courage really to follow our souls, even and especially when it says things that doesn't make sense. Now the last tip, I promised you a little bonus tip. We need a spiritual tip too. We have the body, the nervous system, the conscious mind, tips on how to reframe past situations. My last tip is to strengthen your relationship with God. And if God doesn't resonate with you, say whatever resonates with you, the universe, the ground intelligence, I like God. To me, it's not, I don't really have any religious trauma in my life, in this lifetime at least. So I just see God as this beautiful, loving, omnipresent force. But take whatever resonates with you and develop a relationship with it. That is my point. Because we're never meant to live in isolation. We were always meant to live connected, like this, to this bigger force. I am talking to God every morning, or praying, you can call it. Just about my loved ones, about myself, what I would like guidance on. And it is just so much more practical, and it's so much more natural and organic than to ask AI, for example. You can just ask God directly. You don't need to go through all this technology. The technology that's like high-tech today, it is very behind the God technology, the spiritual technology that we already have access to. And sometimes I also talk to God throughout the day. For example, yesterday I had a situation where two of my beautiful crystal singing balls had gotten stuck into one another. And I was like, crap, I don't want them to break because they were really stuck. And it felt like pulling them apart would crack the crystal. So I just asked God for support. And I actually asked AI too, to be honest. But I was asking God for support. I was visualizing them coming apart, both of them whole and complete, with no scratches whatsoever. And that's also what happened. So to wrap up, yes, life is not just about dissociating, because that's a trauma response, nor is it to keep living in this 3D human experience of just living in a loop and repeating the same mistakes or situation over and over and be governed by the ego, by fear. It is really about being in a body, in your human experience, but alchemizing the fear into love and start to embody more and more of your soul. And as a natural consequence, start to live more from love than from fear. That's at least what I want to do in this lifetime. You're free to do your thing. So that was all we had for this week. Flirt with me in the comments. Tell me which tip resonated the most, and if you have any more tips that I forgot to share on how to trust more. Hit the little bell if you want a notification where my next video comes out, because I have a lot coming up. And I see you in the next one. Watching, vad fan heter det? It all depends on what your soul wanted to experience. Doesn't need to look like the way that we have seen it look like. Why? It's kind of a scarf that is knitted in one specific pattern. Oh, the mic is running away.